We're in for a fun one today. Welcome back to another episode of I Can Do This All Day. I'm Dan, the Part-Time Avenger. That's Mark, the Resident Jedi.
Hello there. Today we're going to talk about something that is not Marvel, and I couldn't be more excited to finally have some kind of Star Wars content to talk about. So today, Tales of the Empire. We twisted Dan's arm. We got him to do it. We finally gotten Dan to take in some Star Wars animation. So now we get to hear what he thought.
For the record, I don't think Star Wars sucks. Okay, I like Star Wars. I do know a little bit about like some of the books and everything, but for me, I was never a big cartoon guy anyways. So it was just tough for me to kind of go into Star Wars, especially because there was so much content there. You know, like I just got done finishing the X-Men 97 season, and that was a piece of cake. But there is way more seasons. If you could enlighten me, like how many seasons of animated Star Wars stuff is there?
It really depends on your definition of like which animated Star Wars you want to talk about, because there's a lot. So what do you know? What don't you know? And where have you come into this, right? Because I'm sure there's listeners that have seen everything. And then there are people that just like, there's animated Star Wars. What?
Yeah.
It's not just what if.
I have not seen anything regularly for Star Wars animation. I did catch like a few episodes of Clone Wars, and I think like some time here with Bad Batch and Rebels. But because I didn't know any of the characters and the spots that I was watching, like it just didn't, it didn't grab me to where like, oh, I need to watch the follow-up to this.
Yeah.
Like I kind of, especially for like Clone Wars, like, oh no, I know what the follow-up is to this because I know what happens at the end.
Yeah.
So I don't need to go back to this stuff because I'm not invested in these characters that are, unknown to me. Do I watch something else, or do I go into like the Star Wars rabbit hole of animated content? I don't, like I said, I'm not a hater. It's just, it's not at the top of my priority list. Would I enjoy it? I probably would, but there's nothing really urging me or pushing me to watch that stuff right now.
So there's 11 seasons of animation out there that could be consumed, that develops independent characters, that gives them arcs, that gives them backstory, that are now starting to emerge in a lot of the Disney Plus shows. Like Ahsoka, Ezra, all those characters came from animation, not from the movies. So what started out as tangential content is now the driving force behind the expansion of some of the rest of the Skywalker saga, or at least that time frame of Star Wars.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we talked about this before, but do you feel like because there's so much additional content that's canon, is it someone who is just like new to Star Wars, could they watch some of these shows like Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian? Could you watch those shows and not have any Star Wars backstory and still appreciate it? Or would it be just like, oh, you're missing everything in terms of the Easter eggs? Because I know I've missed a lot of the stuff when I watched it, but in your opinion, for a new viewer that's fresh to Star Wars, would they be able to enjoy this or even understand it?
I don't know that my opinion is the popular opinion, but Star Wars has always brought you in the middle without context. You started with episode 4. They didn't give you character development on Darth Vader. They just said, this is Darth Vader. You didn't know his real name until the 4th movie or the 3rd movie. I don't think that ruins the overall show, but I think knowing more of the mythos and the backstory makes it more rich. So it serves as both entertainment and fan service if you have that background. How do you feel about it? You're the unbaptized in that regard, right? You haven't sat through all that. Did you enjoy or not enjoy Book of Boba Fett, or did you just take it as it was?
I took it as it was. I mean, I enjoyed it. Mostly because of the reintroduction of the Mandalorian and
Mhm.
Grogu. But yeah, I mean, there were some really cool facets to that show. Like, I wasn't even a big Boba Fett fan back in the day. Like, I never understood that, like, why everyone's like, oh, Boba Fett's awesome. I was like, really? Because he got his ass whooped and he just got ate by like a desert creature. Like, nothing special to me. It didn't resonate. Just like, there's the people that really love Han Solo and people love Luke Skywalker, and I'm sure there's people that don't. For Boba Fett, it was just like that was really puzzling to me. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like the other stuff that I've been watching, like, we did the review on Obi-Wan and we did Ahsoka. There were things that I got more curious about. I still haven't revisited anything in terms of like the Rebels cartoon based off of the characters that I really liked in the Ahsoka show, but it's not a closed door.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I will. So that's the thing. Like, if I am, we're not talking about a awful movie, right? Like, if we're turned off by an awful movie or an awful TV show, we'll turn it off in the middle of it, or we'll watch it, never talk about it, think about it, ever have the desire to go back to it again. I don't think that's the case for the Star Wars animation stuff, obviously, because I just watched Tales of the Empire for this episode, but at the same time, it still leaves the door open because I still am interested in the Star Wars mythology and all the other characters that are out there. I might not appreciate it or like it as much as the ones that I grew up watching, but it's still in that same family nonetheless, and
Yeah.
and I would be open to it.
Yeah. I think for me, the reason I ended up digesting all these and the really the the great part for those of us that discovered it when it was like semi new. I discovered Clone Wars when it was streaming on like Netflix, pre Disney Plus, pre Disney purchase, right? And you could stream it and watch it. And this was during a huge Star Wars dead zone. They made this, and then there was really nothing else. There was not even whispers of movies. There was not even a thought of having an actual live action anything. So in the gap between episode three, but between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens, that was, like decades almost. So in that decade, you still got to absorb more content and really bring in more of a rich story in, I think, like a very popular genre, which is like war movies, right? You have this opportunity to really build out characters during a very tumultuous time in a setting and bring, real character to what is just referred to like the clones or whatever. Like there's a whole gaggle of them that they have, names, backstories, understandings, they work together. There's a whole, it just builds more on the relationship and makes the characters more rich. The same with Anakin, I think. I think that show builds Anakin out in such a different way. You get to see some of the things that turned this positive or semi-positive, kind of all over the place person to what ends up being this, master of evil, essentially. So I think that there's rich character development available in it, and it's just a different way of that being available. In the gap between, say, Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, we got a lot of books, right? There was a ton. There's an insane amount of Star Wars content in book form, right? Um, a lot of it now is legends, not canon, but that's how like fans got their fix then. And now having a different medium available for that, I think was awesome. It was something we didn't get.
Why do you think that, Star Wars is successful in creating this type of content to where, the mass audience might not necessarily know the characters, but the audience still begins to or it's still built upon that, right? Why do you think like that is successful and still continues to be made, whereas Rebel Moon, which we just recently reviewed, like why does that suck so hard? And is there like a difference in quality? Is it just that, or is it something else about the magnetic charm of Star Wars characters compared to other sci-fi?
I think that Star Wars was so rigorous. Like Lucasfilm set up such a rigorous universe building guide, right? They had so much and so many guidelines for authors, and they put out information and backstories a lot, but they established the worlds and they kept to that. I think that we talk about Rebel Moon, they're establishing their world. Is there enough differentiation? Is there much enough diversity? And does the existence of Star Wars water down the things you see in Rebel Moon because we've seen it before? Right? Star Wars was as a property and as a movie was, like one of the first to put it on screen. It used to be either Star Trek or Star Wars. Dune was written, but not, big screened at all. So these kind of epics just weren't there. And Star Wars had such a huge impact from a pop culture and from a societal perspective, right? That the fan base was so big because of the lack of options, that the more people that buy in, the more people that absorb, and they own the canon in a way, right? They're very protective and almost, religious about it.
Yeah.
Whereas Rebel Moon, like I don't believe it started as anything but a show, right? Was it even a comic?
I think it was just a movie that Zack Snyder wrote and directed.
It's one of a million space movies now. Let me ask you then, right? I've seen all of the animation. I get so much from these, little offshoots they put out. And Tales of the Empire is obviously like not meant to be this large scale epic. We're going to add a bunch of episodes. We're going to continue to release it, like Bad Batch that you mentioned, that I think's on like season 4 now, because they had to end Clone Wars because the Clone Wars were technically over, but they created a new group to usher through the, and bring into the world and build rich characters. Tales of the Empire, not that, not looking to world build. They're looking to add to the mythos, if you will, and give more character development at a very focused level of characters that we already know or have already met. How do you feel
That's
about
the
that kind of detail, that kind of add-on? Do you feel like it's just like, oh, they did it because they'll release it one time, or do you like that kind of stuff?
I can understand why someone would like that, just because I'm assuming a lot of those characters were in some other show or movie, correct?
So there's two major characters in this series, right? There's Morgan Elsbeth, who I hadn't heard of until Ahsoka, or The Mandalorian, technically The Mandalorian. Do you remember where she was in The Mandalorian show?
They all kind of jumbled together for me, so I remember her, but
So yeah, she was in the Mando episode where Ahsoka and Mando went to that town, and Ahsoka fought her for the spear. The spear that she uses in the animated show is the same spear that eventually Mando fights for the Darksaber with.
okay.
And that Elsbeth character also is the one in Ahsoka that finds Thrawn. So they pulled this thread when they introduced in Thrawn that she was a Night Sister. They pulled the thread all the way back to show you her backstory. So that was a character that wasn't big in any movies, that wasn't really, to the best of my knowledge, in a lot of the shows, but they built out a backstory for her, which I thought was cool.
I have my notes from like all the different episodes. So as we go through everything, I want to kind of go just through like episode 1 through, I think it was 5 or 6 that they
Six,
had.
I think it's 6.
With the first episode, I was just like, The mother dying, that was a surprise, just the method of how she
Mhm.
was killed. I was like, oh, whoa, this is like not just like the typical cartoon where like everyone just runs off and fights another day. So I like that. That immediately grabbed my attention. Like, oh, this is a different type of animation. It's not just, Saturday morning cartoon stuff. The Mountain Clan, who the fuck are they? That's what I wrote down. I was like, I have no idea who these people are. Any insight into that? Like,
So it was kind of an offshoot of the Night Sisters.
but
Um,
have they been mentioned before?
not deeply. I don't want to say they weren't because they may have been mentioned in like some side episodes of Clone Wars, but Clone Wars did spend a lot of time on that planet and with the Night Sisters as a character set
Okay.
and dealt with the scene that we see here, the slaughter of the Night Sisters by the Empire. So, like, that's captured in Clone Wars. So, by doing what they did in this, they ground that character, Morgan Elsbeth, in this part of the world, and you see kind of the beginning through her journey in all of these different Star Wars properties. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, but let's just go with it. So I don't know. So they have been mentioned, but they haven't really been mentioned. But okay,
You
sure,
spend
whatever.
you spend a good amount of time on Dathomir, which is the planet
Right.
where that hill tribe is from.
Okay. Um, Another note that I saw. So Morgan Elsbeth, I sort of know her. At least I've seen her in other shows. I'm like, okay, I can appreciate where this could be going,
Mhm.
right? Going into episode 2, where Morgan Elsbeth does a failed sales pitch to the Empire, or
Yeah.
was it the New Republic? Is that who it was? I can't remember
Yeah,
who it
something like
was.
that.
Yeah,
I
so
think it
her
was,
failed sales pitch.
yeah.
Is this what Star Wars has come to? Is just like sales pitches the, you know, uh, after the Republic falls or whatever. Now it's just like, all right, well, let me show you my idea on some blasters and some cool ways to innovate on weapons and technology. Like, I didn't see that coming. I
She was
thought that was
pitching
kind
to
of
the
funny.
Empire. She was pitching,
Yeah.
and the TIE fighter that she shows there was was built in Rebels. So the Empire
Okay.
used her idea, but instead of making it on her planet, they took the resources from her planet and then built it on a different planet where they already had manufacturing.
Got it. Yeah.
It was that was an example of how the Empire kind of just worked to its own benefit, not the benefit of any of the member systems.
And then I saw Thrawn. I was like, I sort of know him. Well, this will be interesting as to see what happens on this. And I wrote down a note like I don't I'm not quite sure if I get this because I don't know where they're going with this. Like I get it, Tales of the Empire, it's gonna focus on the Empire's side. But at
Hmm.
the same time, like where's this going? Because I really don't know a whole lot about Morgan Elsbeth, and she's a bad guy. She's part of, that little faction of everything. But where does it go from here? So going into episode 3, I still don't really get her play as to what she's trying to do. I don't quite understand it. The distress call to Bo-Katan, I was like, oh, cool, I know her. This will be awesome. She'll come in, and at least that I know a lot more about that character. Let's see what happens. And of course, Bo-Katan never shows up. Like I'm curious as to what it is in regards to like how I'm supposed to take this content because
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's gonna go one way, but then is this just like, an anthology of stuff to where it's like all separate stories? Um, I didn't really understand the connectedness
Yeah,
on a lot of that.
it's because it's an epilogue and it brings a very good question or a very good point to a question you made earlier about does the animation stand alone? I don't think this is meant to be standalone in any way because it doesn't tell a full story. It tells epilogues at points for established characters. And because it's so short, there's not an arc. Like you don't see a full story. You just see snippets. And it kind of, I think this is like a kind of a teaser or treat to all those fans that have watched all of it. But I see your point in that you don't, unless you kind of understand the mythos, it's hard to understand just like what the hell's going on or why and where all of it connects. Because the benefit to this is you see, or the benefit to make this more clear is you see how it all connects to everything else. Like you recognize the city, you recognize the citadel that she's working out of, you recognize the staff, like all of that. If that doesn't hit, it's just a small snippet in seeing people react to something.
And so at that point, like I think I know what I'm in for, right? So going into episode four, or actually before I talk about episode four. So one of the things that I saw is at the end of that episode, it's like no wonder the New Republic failed because they had the shittiest guards go out to
Yeah.
that area and they just got fucking smoked. So
Just
like,
smoked
oh,
out.
okay. This
Yeah.
isn't not very good strategy here to go out to some of the outer rims with like the shittiest guards getting their ass handed to them, so that's their bad. They're once again one of the reasons as to why the bad guys keep coming back is because the good guys suck. And yeah.
Well, the good guys
Um
think that you're just gonna like, oh, you're gonna follow the rules, but that would make you a bad guy, then, would it?
Yeah. Going into episode four. So I can't remember the name of that character. Oh no, I wrote it down here. So
Barris?
yes, yeah. So Barris Offie, aka Barista Coffee, that I wrote down in my notes. So that's how I refer to her the
Yeah.
rest of this episode, Barista Coffee. But initially I was like, oh, Buzz Lightyear, I know him because she had like the little purple hood on there. I was like, that's Buzz Lightyear, looks just like him. So then you had Dante and Randall, or I mean, Amar, Dante and Amar. Uh, the sparring session with Kratos from God of War was kind of sweet.
Yeah.
The Grand Inquisitor,
Hmm.
and this is just my thoughts because I know that look. I can't remember who it was, and then I heard someone say Grand Inquisitor, and I was like, oh yeah, got it, totally understand now. But even then, it's hard for me to connect the dots. Like I
Yeah.
know I've seen that person before, and I'm not having a bad time. I'm enjoying, what everything is. It's almost playing off like a murder mystery to me because like, ooh, who is this person? Am I going to be able to find this out based off the context of what's given, or do I need to Wikipedia some shit?
Yeah.
And luckily, so far, I've been
Wikipedia.
able to get,
You can Wikipedia it.
yeah, exactly that I forgot about that too. And then the last note on episode four is Dante got Epsteined. So he basically just got taken out. And yeah, the higher powers that be definitely took care of him. So that's where I'm at on those four episodes. I'm still having a good time.
Hmm.
And I'm curious about it. And they're short episodes, so it's like, yeah, where's the harm in this, right?
Hmm.
So I'm glad that I'm watching it. Episode five, I mean, there was just like some badass battles and murder. Like I didn't see that coming either. And once again, making me appreciate the animation as to what's actually going on. It's more like adult storytelling
Hmm.
in animation. So it's not bad. But one of the things I wasn't quite sure of is, and maybe you can give a little bit of clarification for me, was Barista Coffee a gray Jedi at the end of everything? Because she's not in the old school thought process of, taking kids away and putting them into the Jedi Order. Am I correct in that assumption, or is it something, am I off?
So I think that that's where they're trying to go with it, right? So Barris was a in the Clone Wars, the initial Clone Wars show, right? That introduced Ahsoka was a Jedi that turned or betrayed the Order and set up Ahsoka, and was the reason Ahsoka was left the Order. She was initially like wrongfully accused and ejected from the Order, but Barris was a Jedi who was then found guilty of killing and political crimes and things like that, and was jailed essentially. But then the Empire takes over and they bring her into that Inquisitor program. They talked about the
Right.
Inquisitors in Obi-Wan,
Yeah.
but that whole thing was really touched on a lot in Rebels. And then also in the Jedi Fallen Order video games too, where they really
Okay.
built out the Inquisitors and that they were ex-Force users, ex-Jedi that were brought on and turned to the dark side. It was like Vader's crew for hunting Jedi. So I thought it was really cool to touch on that and that they actually brought Barriss back because there wasn't a lot out there about what happened to her or what she did after she betrayed the Jedi Order and if she survived Order 66, if she was killed, if anything. So this was a fan service arc for sure and a treat for those that really had seen the animation to see that character bring back and then see her arc to retribution. So I think that your explanation of is she a gray Jedi at the end, I think that there could be arguments for that. She didn't I don't remember her having a lightsaber at the end, right? I just remember her using the Force a little bit. Like she didn't have
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
she, not like Ahsoka who had her sabers back and things like that. But I think that there's great explanation there from you not having seen the rest of it, but understanding kind of the mythos there and gleaning the Ahsoka path there to retribution. I think that she saw the effects of evil in a much bigger, the effects of the dark side in a much bigger context and realized the error of her ways and ended her life standing up for something positive or good, if you will. So I enjoyed that because I'd seen the rest of it and loved that they brought back that character. I'm all for bringing back random. We need a Clue Plune episode now of this to figure out what happened to that fucker.
Yeah, I need some Porkins. I need some Wedge in there somewhere. Like that's
Oh,
what I
dude.
need to see.
I mean, you want some Wedge? I can send you some books and stuff that have.
Oh yeah,
There's a
I've
whole
read a little bit of
Rogue
the books.
Squadron pieces. Yeah, I want
Yeah,
some. What
he's
happened to Mace Windu? All the Samuel L. Jackson stuff about I'm alive, bring me back.
yeah.
I only got one arm, but it's still good. I think that this is the stuff that's 100% fan service. But I love that you got something from it. You understood at least the arc, not having seen or ever heard of Barista Coffee, as you call her, Barriss Offee.
I think like those names are still so just goddamn silly. And then you have like normal names in there too, like Dante and Amar. That's pretty normal. But yeah, it's some of those
There's no
names, man.
McLovin. There's just it's a common
It,
name.
it's so funny to me that like I've seen those like Star Wars name generators or like like it's always just awful ridiculous names. But yeah, I like to make myself chuckle. I have a tendency to do that with a lot of movies. Like I did that with Harry Potter as well. When I first started watching the Harry Potter movies, I was dating someone at the time that would talk about all the different characters, and I'd have to ask her like, "Hey, who the fuck is this?" And some of those name comparisons would be like, "Oh yeah, like when someone gave Dobby the clothes, and then so like." I didn't call him Dobby, I called him Golem. So it's like, so
Oh,
Golem, so when he gets clothes, like he's all of a sudden he's like he's free, he could go do whatever the fuck he wants. He's
Dobby's
like,
a free elf.
yeah. Ron, I would always call him Ralph for some reason.
Ralph.
And I'm trying to think if there's some so Ralph, Golem, and I know there's some other ones, but I just love having fun with that stuff. But also at the same time, it's very tough for me. I was lucky that I was watching this with captions on, so I could catch some of the names that were coming through because when I would hear some of this stuff, I was like, "What? It's this weird fucking Star Wars name. I need to figure out who this person is." So I just flipped on the captions and watched the rest of the episodes that way, and so I get a little bit more. But I think in overall, it was a good time. Like I had a good time watching. I like the fact that there's like a few rando references and Easter eggs for some of the characters in there that I knew, not very well, but at least I had some context with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, one of the things about Barista Coffee though is like her help. I totally got like Final Fantasy vibes off of the animation. Like they look like characters out of Final Fantasy,
Yeah, like
like with the
her
hair and
boots at the
stuff.
end. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Who are those people? Are they any significance or
nope, not that I know of.
okay. All right. So that's the thing, like I was expecting like, oh, maybe this is like the
The
some type
last
of
bastion
faction.
of the Jedi. No, not that.
Right,
And
right.
I could be. You know what? I mean, I could be absolutely wrong. I could have missed. There could be a book somewhere that talks about them that I haven't read yet because I haven't read all of it. I haven't read close to all of it.
I can't remember the name of the character from Toy Story 4, but or maybe it was Toy Story 3, but is it Mr. Pricklepants that
Yeah,
looks exactly like that guy? That's who I thought of. Like, I think that's Mr.
yeah,
Pricklepants. They're using the same animation, just like throwing in some Final Fantasy vibes on there. But that's my only way that I can go into something with that deep of a history and mythos. I
hmm
did the same thing with Harry Potter. And yeah, I appreciated Harry Potter and I enjoyed it. But for this, it was like, oh, I want to know who these people are, but I still am. I'm maybe like a few inches closer
yeah,
to the edge of the diving board to just be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna watch them. You
yeah.
know?
The thing that you'd like about Clone Wars is there's a lot of shooting and a lot of people dying.
Oh, okay, yeah,
So I mean,
I'm up
it's
for.
if you're gonna watch anything, I think that Clone Wars is a great place to start because you'll know most of the characters that are in it, right? Because they're all from the prequels. And then if you get through that, I mean, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of seasons,
Yeah,
7, and there's a shit ton of episodes. It's a ton, right? But it's not a lot of good movies coming out anytime soon. So,
yeah.
what Deadpool comes out in July. So between now and then, you might be able to get through it. But
I
that's a
guess.
good question, though. It seems to me that because of this small scale world building, non plot driven, non story arc driven Star Wars content, it's dragging you closer to learning more, which isn't that the goal?
Is it closer to the dark side or closer to the
It's
Force?
closer
That's
to keeping your Disney Plus subscription active.
yeah. I don't think I'm ever going to cancel that. I think it's just going to be there
Same,
forever.
same. But I mean, at least they give you something, and they're like, no, no, we've got other stuff that you can watch too,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
right?
check out Swiss Family Robinson. Like that's
Oh, you can watch the Little People movie, Darby and the Little People. Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah. When we're struggling for content, we could always go back to the well. It's
Yeah, just oh, the well. That movie was so bad.
I think we should revisit some of the other Star Wars movies that, yes, we did our overall rankings, but I think we should kind of maybe go into a deeper dive on some of those episodes, just because I feel like we have the best debates, and we're also well, you're more educated on that facet than I am, but I at least have a solid foundation of the original trilogy, prequels, and then the sequel trilogy. Which,
I mean,
speaking of, like the banter, the hate is so strong on our YouTube with the comments about the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker. Like that is just comical
mm,
as to like these people are for sure fans because they're bringing up all these references and specific names of people that the casual fan wouldn't know. You can always spot the troll, but it's
is it the
one of my
big
favorite.
hair? Is that how you spot the troll? The
The
big
no, no,
tan
no, it's the
colored hair?
gem in the belly button. That's what
Oh,
it
oh,
is.
there you go.
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
The millennials will get it.
It's
You
called
guys
a
will know what we're
kyber
talking about.
crystal, Dan. Kyber
But
crystal in the belly button.
I did see just some funny things. Like, of course, I'd normally shout out like the great contributions, but something that made me chuckle is a troll wrote down like, oh, the FYOGGASI4SL7 was way better than LLMINTLB because everyone is just using the, like TLJ was awful and then ROS was a piece of shit. And so everyone knows, like as Star Wars fans, we
Mm,
know what that stands for. And then this troll just strolls right in and just fucking puts down a whole bunch of letters. Like this movie was so much better because the plot synopsis was more believable, blah blah blah. It's like, okay,
mm,
bravo for you. That's one troll comment that I'll
mm.
actually enjoy. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So
um,
Dan likes acronyms.
I,
Is what we learned from that.
I, I actually despise acronyms at work because whenever I ask what an acronym is, people don't know what it stands for. And so that's where my pet peeve is. But hey, when it comes to movies, and if you're in the fandom, acronyms all fucking day. Let's do this.
AFD,
Um,
son.
hey, I got a question for you though. So, did you enjoy this? And is this something that you can do all day?
Yeah, I can absolutely do this all day. I love the little extras. I love the sprinkles. Before Tales of the Empire, there actually are like some Tales of the Jedi that give more backstory to additional characters. So I knew what I was getting here, but I thought that this was good to bring to the podcast because it was centered more in the Empire struggle, which I know is like where you're the most voiced in the mythos. So I thought that it was cool to bring it up, but yeah, I could do this all day. I wish it was longer. I wish there were more episodes. I would watch them. I find it to be, I love it. This reminds me of comics, right? Where you don't get
Sure.
the whole arc in a comic, but you get character insight and gleaning, and they always kind of come back to a place. So you have 3 comic arcs, you'll have 24 arcs. But this kind of storytelling really reminds me of when you used to read comics for stuff. And that's how you'd gain insight into your favorite characters and your favorite thing. And you could pick up the comic at any point in the run and either learn something more about the character or learn some minutia details, but it would still reflect the journey of the characters. And that's what this is for me. It's just like a comic that I can watch. So I'm all for that because that's what we learned to love story on, right? Give me the details. I love the details. So much details. Most people
Fair
hate
enough.
the movies that I like because if there's a ton of details in it, I'm all in. But as a non encyclopedic Star Wars person, can you do this all day? Is this something that you would watch another segment of or additional episodes of?
So I kind of struggle with this just because I don't want to just flat out say that I can do this all day. There's some contingencies to this. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is I will say I can do this all day because it's just very well done. Number one, the simple nuances of this, even though they're like very short episodes, the music was spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Animation was great. And they had like a variation of animation, which is very cool for me. I'd like to see a little bit of difference with the characters, the whole Final Fantasy vibe type thing compared to what I view as like the traditional
Yeah.
Star Wars animation type thing. But the action, the seriousness, and the tone of everything was totally up my alley. I like animation where it has that type of, there's stakes involved, right? Whether you like the person or not, or where you know them or not is irrelevant. There are stakes that are involved with the people that are on the screen. So I will say, like, yeah, that was pretty awesome. I, on my little notes as I was watching everything, like I got excited. Like Thrawn, I know him. I don't know much about him, but sure, this is cool. I like to see a little bit more about Thrawn. I still I still think Thrawn is like a big piece of shit, like filler, because he's just blue. He hasn't done anything cool that I've seen yet. So it's just like, Luke after Return of the Jedi. I never got to see anything like super super cool that he did besides do a couple of backflips and use the force to move some shit. It wasn't until The Mandalorian where I got to see like, oh, that's Luke Skywalker, the baddest Jedi
Yeah.
of them all.
You mean the
And
best 5 minutes of Star Wars that's ever been made?
so awesome. I
Oh,
remember that Christmas. Was it around Christmas time? I think I watched
it's
it
the
around
gift that
Christmas
keeps on
time.
giving, as far as I'm concerned.
I was
I'm going to
so
watch it before I go to
excited.
bed now, just now because you mentioned it.
I love like the remixes of that where people put in like Bonnie Tyler, the hero song, and that's playing that as Luke is coming in on the X-Wing. Like everything just fits so perfectly with that scene. And yeah, so I will say that I can do this all day. I love all the Easter eggs, and I think I will actually check out the Tales of the Jedi. So maybe we'll do an episode on that. Just get a little bit more into it. But I'd like because I was so unenthusiastic and it was just not as gratifying for the sequel trilogy, I think I can go back to this and get a little bit of that life and sparkle back for Star Wars.
Love it. Love it when you sparkle, buddy.
I know you do. You dig it the most. But
Oh,
I think that wraps it up for this episode. So we traveled out to a galaxy far, far away, but it's the present day, which is really cool. So hopefully you all enjoyed the episode. But until next time, maybe we'll have some more Star Wars stuff, maybe some Marvel stuff, maybe some other off the wall shit. This is Dan, Part-Time Avenger. That's Mark the Resident Jedi.
don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know where we should start. What Star Wars animation should we make Dan watch to enjoy or to hate? Let us know. Should we start with the full Clone Wars movie? Should we pick some episodes? Should we start with Rebels? Let us know.
Looking forward to it, everyone. We'll see you next time.